They were just two teenage girls trying to visit their father. So why did the airline stop them? 17-year-old twins, Imani and Ayanna Taylor, stood at the boarding gate. Tickets in hand, smiles on their faces until a gate agent's expression turned cold. Their documents were fine. Their names were clear. So why were they suddenly flagged for additional screening? Was it a glitch in the system or something deeper? What happens when an airline's security algorithm sees skin color before it sees identity? And what if the man on the other end of their desperate phone call wasn't just their father, but the billionaire CEO whose technology was supposed to prevent this very kind of discrimination? This isn't just a story about injustice at the gate. It's a story about power, perception, and what happens when silence is broken by the courage of two young women and the storm that follows. Ready to discover how a moment of quiet discrimination unraveled into a national reckoning? Hit like, share this story, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss what happens next. Now, let's step into the terminal and into the truth. The hum of the aircraft cabin was a quiet kind of comfort, like the white noise machine Ayanna used at night when anxiety clung too tight to let her sleep. She glanced sideways at her sister, Imani, who sat with her seat back straight and her tablet in hand, already reviewing slides for a school competition that wouldn't happen for another 3 weeks. Typical. Imani caught her staring and raised an eyebrow. "What nothing?" Ayanna murmured, shifting her sketchbook on her lap. "Just wondering how long you'll pretend you're not nervous." Imani snorted. "I'm not nervous. It's just a flight. First-class flight. Without Mom. Without Dad. To Dad." That shut her up, at least for a few seconds. The flight from JFK to San Diego was their first time flying alone since the separation. Monica Mom had stood stiffly at the departure curb, her arms around them longer than usual, her voice quieter than normal. "If anything feels off, you call me. I don't care if you're in the sky. You call me." They had nodded like they always did, but something in her tone had stuck with Ayanna, like a burr beneath the surface. Now, at cruising altitude, everything felt normal. Or it should have. The seats were buttery leather. The cabin lights were dimmed to a soft gold. A few passengers were already dozing off under plush gray blankets, their designer shoes tucked neatly under the reclined footrests. Ayanna leaned forward and unzipped her backpack, pulling out the fabric pencil roll Elijah had gifted her last Christmas. It had been delivered via Celine, his executive assistant, with a note that read, "Keep creating. Proud of you always." She'd never told him how often she reread that note. Across the aisle, a flight attendant with pin-straight blonde hair was laughing softly with a well-dressed white couple. She topped off their champagne flutes with an elegant twist of her wrist. When she turned, her eyes swept past Ayanna and Imani without pause. Ayanna blinked. "Did she just skip us?" she asked. Imani looked up. "Maybe she's coming back." But she didn't. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. The same attendant, Nancy. Her name tag read "Return to serve" the row behind them. Still nothing for them. Ayanna caught Imani's eye. "Do you want me to say something?" she whispered. Imani hesitated. "No, maybe it's a sequence thing." But her tone was tighter than usual. Ayanna leaned back in her seat, resting the sketchbook against her knees. Her pencil hovered above the page, but her hand didn't move. Her gaze drifted again to the rows ahead. The couple chatting with Nancy. The man in 2A who'd received both a drink and a blanket within 5 minutes of takeoff. She and Imani. Not even a glance. Outside, the sky was fading into that deep Atlantic blue. Just past dusk, the clouds stretched like pulled cotton. Peaceful, unreachable. Inside, Ayanna felt a strange pressure building. Not in her chest, but somewhere more hidden. Not panic, not sadness. Something heavier. like suspicion without proof, like déjà vu in a different uniform. Imani was typing something on her tablet, probably emailing Dad Elijah, or maybe logging into the Verity virtual portal he'd set up for them. Verity Systems, his life's work, the empire he built from a dorm room idea into a $3 billion enterprise. They were supposed to be visiting him for his soft launch weekend. Just the three of them. No Monica. To reconnect, he had said, and Ayanna had believed him. Still wanted to. Nancy passed again. This time Ayanna held up a hand, small smile on her face. "Excuse me, may we have some water?" Nancy's lips tightened. Polite, but cool. "We're still confirming some seating assignments. I'll be with you shortly." And just like that, she was gone again. What the hell was that? Ayanna hissed. Imani's jaw twitched. "Don't escalate. I just asked for water." "I know." Her sister's voice was low. Let's just wait." Ayanna swallowed. Her throat was dry. "From dehydration?" "Yes, but also from something else." She turned her face toward the window, letting the silence between them settle. That was when she noticed a boy across the aisle, maybe early 20s, in a navy uniform with gold trim on the epaulettes. He was flipping through a safety manual, but looked up and smiled gently at her. She blinked, unsure if it was pity or curiosity. He nodded once, respectful. Measured? Ayanna looked away, feeling the burn creep into her chest. When she spoke again, her voice was so soft Imani barely caught it. "We don't belong here." Imani turned toward her sharply. "Don't say that." "But we do. We paid. We checked in. We have the damn receipts." Ayanna stared down at her hands. She hadn't realized until now that they were shaking. The cabin lights dimmed further, signaling the start of the dinner service. Aromas of warmed bread and roasted vegetables drifted through the aisle like whispers of comfort. Imani closed her tablet softly and watched as the cart rolled past their row again without stopping. Ayanna followed it with her eyes. Her stomach growled, audible enough for Imani to glance over. "You didn't eat before the flight." "I was too nervous," Ayanna said, folding her arms. Imani pressed her fingers against her forehead. "Okay, I'm going to say something now." Ayanna didn't stop her. Imani reached up, calmly, and pressed the call button. The chime echoed briefly, and then they waited. 5 minutes, 10. A flight attendant, not Nancy, but a younger woman with brown curls and a name tag reading Claire, finally approached. She looked harried. "Hi there," Claire said, smiling tight. "Sorry for the delay. How can I help?" Imani straightened. "We haven't received menus or drinks yet. Our call light's been on a while." Claire frowned. "Really? That's odd." She glanced toward the front of the cabin. "You're in 3A and 3B, correct?" "Yes," Imani said slowly. "Our tickets are for first class." Claire nodded. "I'll double-check and be right back." As she walked away, Ayanna muttered, "She was nicer." Imani didn't respond. Her jaw was set like stone. Claire returned 2 minutes later with a forced smile. "There seems to be a note on your reservation," she said hesitantly. "It says there's a mismatch in verification. Possibly a duplicate booking." "That's not possible," Imani replied, her voice low and even. "We checked in. Seats assigned. We even have boarding stubs." Claire shifted awkwardly. "I'll escalate to the lead." And just like that, she was gone. Ayanna leaned over. "Is this where we're supposed to pretend this isn't happening?" "No." Imani said, "This is where we document." She opened her phone and took a time-stamped photo of their seats, their boarding stubs, and the cabin layout. Ayanna followed suit with a short video, whispering the date and time. Her voice shook slightly. Across the aisle, the white couple that had been laughing with Nancy earlier received refills and a warm towel. The man reclined his seat and closed his eyes. The woman unwrapped a lavender-scented wipe and slowly rubbed her hands. Ayanna's fingers were still dry. Claire returned again, this time trailing Nancy Griggs, who wore the same brittle smile she'd used earlier. "Good evening," Nancy said, as if it were the first time they'd met. "I understand there's some concern." "Yes," Imani said. "We've been in our seats for over an hour and haven't received basic service. We were told there was a verification issue." Nancy's smile faltered for just a moment. "There was a flag on your profile. The system auto-detected a potential mismatch. For security reasons, we sometimes have to pause service until that's cleared." "And what triggered it?" Imani asked. "I'm not at liberty to say," Nancy replied, straightening, "but you're welcome to follow up with customer service after landing." Imani leaned forward, resting her arms on her thighs. "Let me guess, once the name Elijah Taylor is involved, the flag magically disappears." Nancy blinked, just once, then recovered. "I'm sorry." "Who our father," Ayanna said. "CEO of Verity Systems, partner to your airline's new passenger analytics platform. A flicker. A very small flicker." Nancy cleared her throat. "If there's been a misunderstanding, I assure you it's being corrected. I'll make sure you're served promptly." "Thanks," Imani said coolly. Nancy left without another word. As Claire returned with 2 meal trays' belated offerings and a sudden change in tone, Ayanna whispered, "I hate that it took a name." Imani nodded slowly. "Me too." They picked at their food in silence. The chicken was dry, the salad already wilting. The tray next to Ayanna's elbow jostled slightly as turbulence rippled through the cabin. The fastened seatbelt sign lit up overhead. A few passengers stirred. Others ignored it. Imani, however, sat frozen. "I feel weird," she said softly. "Not just about Nancy, about this whole flight. Like we're not safe. No, like we're being observed." Ayanna's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Imani reached into her bag and pulled out a slim notebook, her logic log. As Ayanna had once teasingly dubbed it, she'd been tracking things since they boarded timestamps, exchanges, anomalies. Now she added one more meal service withheld until name of influential father mentioned. Ayanna watched her sister, both proud and scared. She'd always admired how Imani didn't shrink under pressure. But this time felt different. This wasn't an academic debate or school injustice. This was mid-air, 30,000 feet above any leverage. "You think Dad knows?" Ayanna asked. "He will," Imani said. "Should we call him again?" Imani looked at the call screen. "No signal bars." "Not yet," she said. "Let's wait until descent. Let's collect everything." "You mean like receipts?" "I mean proof." Ayanna closed her sketchbook and stared at her unfinished portrait of the first officer she'd glimpsed earlier. Miles. That was the name stitched above his badge. He'd smiled at her earlier genuinely. She thought. She hoped. But right now, trust felt like a luxury, even at 30,000 feet. Ayanna's sketchbook stayed closed for the rest of the flight. She sat stiff in her seat, hands folded in her lap, her tray now cleared but her appetite long gone. A familiar weight pressed down on her chest. Not fear exactly, but the dull ache of being watched. Not in the way of admiration or curiosity, but surveillance. Imani, beside her, was doing what she always did in moments like this, analyzing, cataloging, shielding herself with precision and logic. Her notebook was back in her hands, and she was writing in neat lines. Time of delayed service, name of attending flight staff, verbal discrepancy in seat verification claim, reaction change after paternal identity disclosed. She paused only to rub the bridge of her nose, a habit Ayanna recognized from childhood, the way she used to do during math tests when the numbers stopped making sense. "What are we supposed to do with all this?" Ayanna asked finally. her voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. "Document?" "And wait," Imani said, not looking up. "We're on a plane. We're trapped in the air. What does documenting do?" Imani turned to her, her voice soft but firm. "It gives us our own record, so they don't get to rewrite it." Ayana nodded slowly. It made sense, but she still felt like she was floating, not in the clouds, but untethered, disconnected from gravity and fairness and the usual rules she thought people followed. She reached for her phone again. No signal. Still, beside her, Imani was scrolling through offline emails, trying to locate a file Elijah had sent weeks ago. It detailed the new partnership between Verity Systems and Altair Airlines, a cutting-edge passenger authentication and analytics suite that claimed to reduce human error and bias in flight management. The irony of it all made her stomach churn. Their father's algorithm was supposed to fix things. Instead, it was being used or misused by an airline whose crew couldn't even serve them water without suspicion. Across the aisle, the young co-pilot, Miles Carter, reemerged from the cockpit to stretch. He walked the aisle slowly, his steps unhurried. When he passed them, he paused slightly, just a beat. "You two okay?" he asked quietly, crouching slightly so his voice wouldn't carry. Imani glanced at Ayana, then back at him. "Why wouldn't we be?" Miles gave a faint, sheepish smile. "I saw the service issues earlier. Just wanted to check in." Ayana tilted her head. "Are you allowed to say that Miles hesitated?" "Not really, but I'm still in training, which means I still believe people deserve decency." Imani blinked, surprised by his candor. "Are you saying what we think you're saying?" He straightened slightly. "I'm saying I notice patterns, and sometimes patterns repeat for the wrong reasons." "Did someone flag our names in the system?" Imani asked bluntly. "Is that why there was a hold?" Miles looked uncomfortable, but didn't deny it. "Sometimes it's not the system. Sometimes it's the way people interpret the system." Ayana's voice was quiet, but firm. "It wasn't just interpretation. It was how she looked at us." Miles nodded. "I know." He hesitated again. "Do you want me to notify the captain?" Imani shook her head. "Not yet. But thank you for asking." "Okay," Miles said, glancing around. "I'll check back in before landing." As he walked away, Ayana stared after him. "That was unexpected." "Yeah," Imani murmured, "but maybe not unwelcome." They sat in silence for a while, both processing what had just happened. Then the voice came. "Excuse me," a passenger said from behind them. Ayana turned. It was a woman mid-40s, neatly dressed, white, who leaned forward just enough to be heard. Her tone was not hostile, but definitely probing. "I don't mean to intrude," she said, "but I saw what happened earlier. The delay. The way they ignored you. I just wanted to say, that didn't look right to me." Ayana blinked, unsure how to respond. Imani beat her to it. "Thank you. That means a lot." The woman nodded. "If you need a witness statement or anything, I'll back you up." Then she hesitated. "Is it true your father is someone important?" Imani tilted her head, assessing her carefully. "He's our father. That's important enough." The woman flushed. "Sorry, I didn't mean it's okay." Ayana interrupted gently. "We know what you meant." The woman sat back, looking a little chastised. Imani turned back to Ayana. "See, we're not invisible." "No," Ayana agreed. "We're just inconvenient." The plane hit a patch of turbulence then, and the cabin lights flickered. A metaphor, Ayana thought grimly. They were in a beautiful box, hurtling through the sky, where class didn't shield you from perception, and perception had sharp edges. Imani took out her phone again and opened a note. Need to talk to Dad. Need to ask how his system is being used. Need to decide what we want to do with what we've seen, Ayana added softly. Need to ask why we're still explaining ourselves to strangers in first class. Imani didn't answer. She didn't have to. The descent had already begun. So had the real story. The landing gear thudded beneath them, a hard bump that rippled up through their bodies. As the plane touched down at Chicago's Midway International Airport, the cabin shifted from silent to restless. Seatbacks clicked upright. Phones flickered to life. Imani gripped her armrest tightly, not from fear but from preparation. The real turbulence hadn't even started yet. Ayana exhaled slowly, blinking down at her phone screen. Messages rushed in like a tide. 17 new texts, 4 missed calls, dozens of notifications, and 1 message from Dad. Just landed myself. I'm here. Meet me near Gate 9. We need to talk about what happened. Imani looked at her own screen. Same message, same urgency in the phrasing. Their father didn't usually text like that. Elijah Taylor was a man of clipped sentences, time slots, and carefully calibrated communication. This felt personal. Let's go, Imani said, unbuckling her seatbelt. They grabbed their carry-ons and stood. Nancy Griggs gave them a thin smile as they passed the galley, polite, impersonal, and vaguely performative. Claire Ramos, the junior attendant, offered something closer to sincerity. I hope your stay in Chicago is peaceful, she said softly, as if trying to apologize without saying the word. Imani nodded in acknowledgement. Ayana said nothing. They exited the aircraft with the rest of the first-class cabin. As they stepped into the jet bridge, the contrast in air pressure hit them like a metaphor relief mixed with rising tension. The terminal was a blur of overhead lights, moving walkways, and impatient travelers. Yet somehow, their father stood out instantly. Elijah Taylor was hard to miss 6'2", impeccably dressed in a navy wool coat over a graphite suit, and the kind of calm that made people instinctively move aside when he approached. His presence wasn't loud, but it resonated. Ayana called out, quickening her pace. He caught her in a tight embrace. You okay? She nodded into his chest. Then he turned to Imani, and they embraced too, but it lingered, like a transfer of quiet strength. I got your messages, he said as they stepped aside from the flow of passengers, but not the whole story. You'll want to hear it, Imani replied, already pulling out her notebook. Elijah raised an eyebrow. Of course you took notes. Ayana gave a half laugh, but her eyes were still clouded. They didn't treat us like passengers. Not until your name came up. I expected better from Altaver, Elijah muttered, jaw tightening. You designed the passenger verification platform they use, Imani said, or at least licensed it. I designed the framework, Elijah corrected. Their internal implementation is their own. They're misusing it. Dad, Ayana said, her voice cracking slightly, and they're using your name to cover it up. That stopped him cold. Imani handed over her notebook. He skimmed it quickly, absorbing every word. His face remained unreadable. Ayana added, a pilot. Miles Carter said he's seen patterns too, and he's been reporting it. No one's listening to him. Elijah exhaled. Carter. I've heard that name before. He stepped away for a moment, typing rapidly into his phone. Ayana and Imani exchanged glances. Their father wasn't angry. He was calculating, which, in many ways, was more dangerous. Let's get out of here, he said, returning. Selene has a car waiting. We'll talk properly at the hotel. As they exited into the brisk Chicago air, a black SUV pulled up. Selene Hart. Elijah's executive assistant stepped out to greet them. She looked at the girls with a mixture of concern and barely restrained fury. He told me what happened. You two okay? We will be, Imani said. Did anyone record anything? Celine asked. Video, audio, anything visual I did. Ayanna said quietly. Short clips, and one of the gate agent checking IDs. She wasn't subtle. Celine's expression sharpened. Good. We might need it. Inside the SUV. Elijah turned to face them. I need to know something before this goes any further. Do you want this to stay private, or do you want to escalate? Ayanna hesitated. Imani didn't. They didn't just make a mistake, she said. They followed a script that hurts people who look like us. And they didn't stop until power walked through the door. Elijah studied his daughter. Understood. He took out his phone and made a call. This is Elijah Taylor, he said when the line connected. Patch me through to Altivere's Compliance Council. No, not the PR team. Compliance. The girls sat in silence, watching their father shift seamlessly from dad to CEO, from listener to strategist. He hung up, turned back, and said, I'm calling in a formal audit. If there's a traceable pattern in their system racial flagging, verification bias, delayed service by profile, I'll find it. What if they push back? Ayanna asked. They will, Elijah said, which is why we need documentation, patterns, and voices, not just yours. He glanced at Imani. You still have that spreadsheet template. She smiled faintly. Already started compiling. That's my girl, Elijah said softly. The SUV turned toward the heart of the city, its headlights slicing through the darkening streets. The skyline loomed ahead, glass and steel, ambition and opportunity. But the Taylor family wasn't here for sightseeing. They were here to uncover a truth that too many wanted to stay hidden, and that truth had just landed. The penthouse suite at the Summit Grand Hotel offered sweeping views of downtown Chicago, but Ayanna didn't even glance at them. She sat curled in a velvet armchair, knees to her chest, watching her phone screen refresh every second. Her own video of the boarding incident, uploaded anonymously hours earlier, was no longer anonymous. Someone had reshared it with the caption, Black twin sisters denied basic service in first class until their dad, billionaire tech CEO, made one call. This is what bias looks like. The tweet had gone viral. The video was now everywhere. Across the suite, Imani sat with her laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard as she compiled timestamps, incident notes, and passenger testimonies. Her face was taut with concentration, but the furrow in her brow betrayed her concern. At the dining table, Elijah stood with Celine Hart and a young analyst from Verity Systems named Nathan Kwan, who had arrived minutes earlier with a flash drive full of system logs from Altivere. Here, Nathan said, plugging it into Imani's laptop. This is everything we were able to pull from Altivere's behavioral screening platform over the past 3 months. Metadata, flagging rates, ID verifications. Are the logs clean? Elijah asked. Nathan hesitated. No, and that's the problem. He tapped the screen. This column shows how often additional screening is triggered by the system. When filtered by surname, appearance profile, and boarding tier, there's a 4.3x increase in secondary checks for passengers flagged as non-white, even when verified in pre-check systems. Ayanna looked up sharply. So it wasn't just us. No, Nathan said quietly. You were part of a pattern. Imani inhaled slowly, blinking at the data. This isn't just a pattern. It's a design flaw. Or maybe a design feature. Celine crossed her arms. If we say that publicly, we'd better be ready to prove intent. Ayanna rose from the chair, suddenly restless. So what now, a press conference? A lawsuit? What do we do with this? Elijah didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to the window and stared out at the dark city. When he finally spoke, his voice was low but resolute. We do what we've always done. We tell the truth. But we do it on our terms. He turned to the girls. I've spoken to a few contacts in the tech accountability space, activists, journalists, professors. They've been waiting for something like this. A story that's not theoretical, that's not buried in code. Ayanna sat back down, rubbing her temples. What if they say we're only speaking up because we're rich enough to get attention? They'll say that, Imani replied. They'll say worse. And they'd be right, Ayanna said bitterly. We do have privilege. We had access. We had your name, Dad. That's why the door opened. Yes, Elijah agreed. And that's exactly why we have to speak for the people who don't. Silence stretched between them, taut with truth. Finally, Ayanna whispered, I just wanted to visit you. I just wanted to show you my sketches in person. Imani's voice cracked slightly. I just wanted to shadow the Verity team for 2 days. That's it. I know, Elijah said. And I'm sorry your visit turned into a fight you didn't ask for. But sometimes the fight finds you, and then you decide who you want to be in it. A notification pinged on Celine's phone. She frowned. It started, she said, turning the screen toward them. CNN headline. Twin daughters of tech CEO say they were racially profiled by airline staff and they have the receipts. A second ping followed, from another source. TechCrunch. Verity Systems faces scrutiny over bias in licensed airport software. Imani's eyes narrowed. They're dragging the company, too, even though this wasn't our side of the system. Elijah shook his head. It doesn't matter. We touched the system. We touched the story. Now we are the story, Ayanna whispered. Are you going to lose everything? Her father turned toward her, eyes gentle. I built everything I have by telling people the truth they didn't want to hear. I'll risk losing it the same way. Celine nodded. We can shape the story, but we can't stop it. Either we take control, or we get buried under it. Nathan stood. I should get back to the Verity office. There's going to be questions from the board. Wait, Imani said. Before you go, can you send me anonymized versions of the screening data? I want to build a visual map. Something people can actually understand. I'll send it tonight. Nathan promised. When he left, Elijah turned to his daughters. I need to ask you both something important. He said, You're not kids anymore. But this will make you public. The story will stop being yours. People will use your faces, your names, not always kindly. He paused. So I need to know, do you want to step back now? I'll take it from here. You've done enough. Ayanna shook her head first. No, she said. I'm tired of feeling like we only matter because of who you are. Then Imani. We've been learning how to be quiet and respectful for years, and all it got us was suspicion and silence. If our voices are finally loud enough to be heard, we should use them. A rare smile crossed Elijah's face. You both take after your mother. That brought the first laugh of the night. They sat together then, a family recalibrated by conflict, each carrying their own weight, but finally moving in the same direction. From the kitchen, Celine brought over mugs of tea. Sleep soon, she ordered gently. Tomorrow's going to be a war zone. Ayanna took a sip, warming her hands around the mug. Imani went back to her laptop, building a clean, sharp infographic that translated lines of bias into something undeniable. And Elijah. He opened a blank document, titled it, The Truth About What Happened at 37,000 Feet. He didn't know how the world would receive it, but he knew how it would begin. Morning light spilled through the suite's panoramic windows, but there was no peace in it. Ayanna sat on the edge of her bed, clutching her phone as a national news anchor introduced their story to the country. 2 black teenage girls, both honor students, both flying first class, were flagged, delayed, and nearly denied boarding by Altaver Airlines. The twist: their father is none other than Elijah Taylor. billionaire founder of Verity Systems and one of the most influential minds in airport security technology. Imani, already dressed in a slate gray sweater and jeans, muted the TV from across the room. "That's not how we wrote it," she said quietly. Ayanna blinked away, a sting in her eyes. "I didn't think it would feel this invasive." "It always does," Imani replied. "The story stops belonging to you the moment it's told aloud." In the living room, Elijah stood at the breakfast bar, scanning 3 devices: tablet, laptop, phone, all humming with pings, alerts, and incoming requests. Celine Hart sipped her black coffee in silence, fielding emails with the calm of a crisis-seasoned veteran. CNN, NBC, The Atlantic, 3 podcasts, 2 roundtable forums, and a feature inquiry from Teen Vogue. Believe it or not, Elijah looked up. They want Ayanna and Imani. They want a story. Whether you give it to them is another question. As if on cue. Ayanna emerged from the bedroom, expression guarded. Imani followed. "They're already twisting things," Ayanna said. "People are saying we only got stopped because we look too young for first class," Imani added. "Or that we're overreacting. That it was just a misunderstanding." Elijah stepped forward. "It's always just a misunderstanding until it happens again. And again. That's why we don't just respond emotionally. We respond intelligently. I hate that we have to be perfect to be heard," Ayanna muttered. "I hate that we have to prove we're worth respect," Imani said. "We had the right seats, the right documents. We didn't raise our voices, and we still had to invoke your name to be treated like humans." Celine handed Ayanna a warm cup of tea. "You did everything right." "Which is why this hits so hard." Elijah's phone rang. He saw the name and gave a sigh before answering. "Monica, don't Monica me," came his ex-wife's voice, sharp, clipped, and unmistakably maternal. "Why didn't I hear from you about all this before seeing it on national news?" The girls winced. "We didn't expect it to explode this fast," Elijah replied evenly. "The video went viral overnight." "You're using them," Monica accused. "Don't deny it. You're leveraging their pain to boost your public brand and Verity's." Ayanna spoke up from the couch, voice steady. "Mom, we chose this. I know you're scared for us, but this wasn't about Dad. It started with us." "And now the internet's eating you alive," Monica said, her tone breaking slightly. "You're 17. You should be prepping for college essays, not giving press interviews about racial bias." Elijah placed the phone on speaker. "They're not alone, Monica. They have support. They have agency. And more importantly, they have a platform now." There was silence on the line. Then Monica's voice softened. "You know what this kind of attention can do. You've lived it." "Are you prepared for what happens next?" "I am," Elijah said. Ayanna leaned toward the phone. "We are," Monica sighed. "Then make sure the story stays about justice. Not just drama. I promise," Ayanna whispered. The call ended. Imani opened her laptop. "The infographics done. I color-coded the disparity rates by name profiles, racial identification, and passenger tier. Even if someone doesn't want to read, they can't ignore this." She turned the screen toward them. A heat map of data points showed red clusters around names and faces that didn't conform to the industry's idealized profile of safe. Celine whistled softly. "You just made it impossible for them to claim it was random." Imani nodded. "Now we need a voice to explain it." Ayanna stood and walked to the sliding glass door, gazing out at the city. "You remember when I was 12, she said quietly, "and that museum security guard followed me for 2 entire exhibits. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just looked. Unexpected." Elia looked at her, remembering. "You didn't tell us until months later. I didn't have the words for it then, she said. Now I do. She turned around. I want to write our statement. Not just a press release, a letter, from me and Imani, from us as people. Imani smiled. I'll edit it after you write. Elijah stepped back, watching them, both young women stepping into something larger than themselves, with clarity he hadn't possessed until much later in his own life. I'll have Selene coordinate interviews only after the letter's published, he said. The world will hear your words first. Selene nodded. We'll time the post for 11:00 a.m. sharp. Every major outlet is refreshing your feeds by the minute. Back at her laptop, Ayanna began typing. This isn't about a boarding pass, or a gate agent, or a system error. This is about how we see each other and who gets believed when they say something feels wrong. Imani sat beside her, suggesting lines, clarifying tone, shaping emotion into impact. By the time 11 struck, the letter was live, and within minutes, it began to spread, not just through the news cycle, but through schools, family chats, activist circles, and tech communities. It was quoted, reposted, translated, and then came the unexpected. A direct message from Miles Carter, the young co-pilot from their flight. I've seen this happen, again and again. I've reported it. I have logs, records, emails, and if you're going public, I'd like to support you, whatever it costs me. Ayanna's hands trembled slightly as she showed the message to her father. Elijah looked down at the screen, then up at his daughters. Looks like you're not the only ones ready to speak. The email came at 3:14 a.m., marked confidential, time sensitive. Selene was the first to read it. By 6:30, she had rerouted her morning brief with Elijah and forwarded the contents to the secure server used only for internal legal threats or acquisitions. By 7:00 Elijah stood at the window of their suite, coffee cooling in his hand, reading the subject line again, RE pattern disparities in passenger verification, internal concerns, logged and ignored. Attached were 17 files, flight logs, email chains, training slides, incident reports, data spreadsheets, and at the heart of them all, Miles Carter's name. I didn't expect him to come through this fast. Elijah muttered. He didn't sleep, Selene replied, eyes sharp, or know exactly how much time he didn't have. Ayanna and Imani joined them at the table moments later, hair pulled back, still in sweats. They'd barely eaten the night before, stomachs twisted with adrenaline and unease. What happened? Imani asked. Elijah turned the screen toward them. He sent everything. Every time a black or brown passenger was flagged without clear justification, every time a supervisor dismissed it, every report they buried. Ayanna's breath caught. They knew. They knew. Elijah confirmed. They called it statistically irrelevant. Incidental overlap. Selene read from one email. Dated 6 months ago, minor disparities are an unfortunate reality of predictive security, as long as false positives remain below 3%. The system is considered compliant, but Miles kept tracking. Elijah said, and guess what? Their false positives for black women weren't 3%. They were 18.7%. Imani's voice was low and measured, and they called it incidental. Ayanna clenched her jaw. If he goes public with this, he'll lose his job. He knows, Elijah said, but he believes it's worth it. At 8:12 the knock came. Selene opened the door to reveal Miles Carter, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, but posture straight, uniform pressed. He carried a hard drive and a plain black folder. I wanted to do this in person, he said. Stepping in, Elijah offered his hand. You just changed the conversation. Miles shook it firmly. That was the point. He placed the drive on the table and opened the folder. Inside a printed timeline of every flagged incident he'd recorded over the past 14 months. From the first day they rolled out the new algorithm, he said, tapping the first entry, I noticed patterns. Same kinds of passengers. Same vague justifications. And I spoke up. They told you to stop, Imani guessed. Worse, Miles said. They told me it was working as intended. That risk profiles needed to be aggressive to be effective. Ayana's voice cracked. And you kept reporting anyway. Miles looked at her and said with quiet conviction, Because I saw passengers like you getting pulled aside, embarrassed, delayed, dismissed, and I couldn't unsee it. Celine glanced up from the spreadsheet. What you've provided is enough to trigger multiple federal inquiries if we release it. I want you to, Miles said. But there's something else. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small USB. Internal chat logs from the dev team at Altaver. Elia stiffened. They built it in-house. Miles nodded. In collaboration with a third-party AI firm. And they joked about the bias. Called it passenger patterning. Even had nicknames for certain flags. Urban Unverified. Latinx Checkpoint. Hijabi Hold. Ayana went pale. They named the flags, she said, horrified. They coded bias into the foundation. Elijah muttered. They didn't just ignore the outcomes, they designed them. Miles sat down slowly. I needed to know that someone would listen. I saw your daughters trying to stay calm in that terminal. I saw the way things shifted when your name came up. And I thought, if even they are treated like that, what hope is there for anyone else? Celine looked at Elijah. We're past the point of PR damage. This is legal territory, criminal negligence, civil rights violations. Elijah nodded grimly. Then we treat it like that. He turned to the girls. I want to involve the Department of Transportation, the ACLU, and select media partners who will report this responsibly, not sensationalize it, Imani said. And what about Miles will Altaver come after him? Celine was already drafting a protection proposal. We'll offer him whistleblower coverage, legal representation, and if they retaliate, we take them to court. Ayana looked at Miles, her voice small but firm. Thank you for risking everything. He smiled, tired but honest. If I lose my job over this, I'll still have done the right thing. Maybe, Elijah said slowly. You won't lose it. Maybe you'll start something bigger. At noon. Celine placed 3 calls to a senior investigator at the DOT, a lawyer at the Center for Tech Equity, and a reporter at the New York Times with a reputation for nuance and integrity. By 3 p.m. Their statement was updated. By 5 p.m. The first headline broke Altaver whistleblower reveals internal bias in AI passenger screening system was designed. This way, the floodgates opened. Talk shows, think tanks, podcasts, university roundtables. The internet didn't just explode. It organized. The narrative shifted from 2 black girls with a powerful father to a systemic failure threatening the rights of all travelers. And at the center of it stood a family no longer alone. They had allies now, witnesses, data, truth, and they were just getting started. By dawn the next morning, the media frenzy had mutated from outrage into a full-blown reckoning. Every national outlet led with the same central question, was Altaver's screening system built to discriminate? A panel on MSNBC debated algorithmic accountability. NPR interviewed ethicists about predictive profiling. Twitter was a war zone. Hashtags like Guayan Code of Bias. Flyfair, and war not a fault, but design, trended worldwide, in the Taylor family suite. Elijah sat quietly with his phone buzzing beside him, ignored. He stared at the muted TV, where a round table of CEOs and tech journalists dissected the scandal with urgent, self-righteous energy. They're circling, Celine said. handing him a folder of updated statements. Every airline CEO is watching this. The question isn't whether change is coming, it's who will survive the wave. Elijah rubbed his eyes. They'll come after us next. Accuse us of manipulating the narrative for our gain. Celine arched an eyebrow. You think they haven't already? She turned the screen toward him, an anonymous forum post, shared over 40,000 times. Altavaire's just the beginning. Elijah Taylor's ethical AI pitch is a setup for monopoly. He laughed bitterly. They're scared. They should be, Celine said flatly. Ayanna emerged from the adjoining room in sweats and a hoodie, cradling a sketchbook. Her curls were pulled into a messy bun, eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. Imani's still on the phone with Mom, she murmured. She's worried we'll get hurt, that it'll turn ugly. It already is ugly, Elijah said, his voice gentler for her. But we're not backing down. Ayanna hesitated. Can I ask you something? Anything. She sank into the armchair beside him, notebook balanced on one knee. Why didn't you go public before about Altavaire? About the board pushing back? You knew it was bad. Elijah looked down at his hands. Because I was afraid. Not of being wrong, but of being discredited. They don't just attack your ideas. They attack you. Ayanna nodded slowly. That's what Imani said. He glanced over. What did she say? That you've carried all this for years. That you fight in rooms where no one looks like you. And you smile through it, so we don't worry. Her voice broke. But we're not little anymore. We see it. We saw it at the gate. Elijah reached for her hand. I know. And I promise you, I won't carry it alone anymore. She gave a faint smile, then gestured to her notebook. I drew something. Want to see always. She flipped it open to a rough, charcoal image. 2 girls standing at an airport gate, their backs straight, luggage at their sides, facing a wall of shadows with glowing digital eyes. They're not afraid, she said quietly, but they shouldn't have to be this brave. Elijah touched the page reverently. Neither should you. Just then, Imani stepped into the room, phone still in hand. Her expression was unreadable. Mom wants us to come home, she said. Now. Celine stood. She thinks it's unsafe. She thinks it's unsustainable, Imani replied. She said this isn't our burden to fix. Ayanna's face fell. But it is our story. Imani nodded. I told her that. But I also told her. I'm scared too. Elijah looked at her. Imani, I'm scared they'll say we made it up. That we used your name. That we got someone fired just to be seen. Her voice shook, but her spine stayed straight. But I'm more scared of doing nothing. Of going back to the world where this happens and nobody listens. There was a long silence. Then Celine cleared her throat and said, We have a decision to make. Elijah nodded. About how we move forward. She placed 3 documents on the table. 1. We file a formal complaint with the Department of Transportation. It triggers a federal audit, and Altavaire will be forced to open its code for scrutiny. 2. We go public with our own internal research from Verity Systems. Propose new standards. Use your name, your daughter's story, and Miles's data. And 3, she hesitated. We turn down every interview request. Release 1 video, 1 message, on your terms. Imani folded her arms. What if they ignore it? They won't, Celine said. But even if they try, this won't disappear. The truth has already cracked the surface. Ayanna turned to her sister. We should do the video. Imani hesitated. Just us, no, Elijah said. All 3 of us. And so, in a quiet corner of the suite, beneath soft lighting and a Verity logo discreet in the background, they sat before the camera. Ayanna spoke first. We're Ayanna and Imani Taylor. 17 years old. We were denied boarding at Gate B-17, not because of our behavior or our paperwork, but because we didn't look like what their system expected, Imani added, voice steady. We've flown alone before, but that day, something was different, something deeper than a glitch. It wasn't personal, but it was. It was systemic. Then I'm Elijah Taylor, CEO of Verity Systems, but more importantly, father to these two. The system that flagged my daughters wasn't broken. It was doing exactly what it was trained to do. He looked into the lens. That's why we're launching the Ethical Algorithms Initiative, to ensure AI protects everyone, not just those who built it. This isn't just about airports. It's about justice. It's about dignity. It's about building systems that reflect the values we claim to hold. Ayana and Imani said in unison, "We're not here to tear down. We're here to build better." The video was posted at 9:06 p.m. By midnight, it had over 4.2 million views. By morning, the video had gone viral in the truest sense of the word. CNN ran a feature titled CEO, Daughters Challenge AI Bias in Airports. A family stand sparks nationwide dialogue. Time called them the new face of ethical tech. But not all the attention was welcome. At 7:12 mem. A thread appeared on a fringe forum frequented by conspiracy theorists. Verity Systems orchestrated this. Classic PR manipulation. Pretty twins, billionaire daddy, racial bait. Wake up, sheep. At 8:43 m, someone posted the Taylor girls' home address in Boston. By 9:00 mum. Monica Reeve had relocated to a secure hotel with her law firm's crisis team. "Elijah," she said, voice taut on the phone, "this is spiraling. They're targeting the girls. You need to get them off the front lines." "They are the front lines," Elijah said quietly. "But I promise I'll keep them safe." That morning, as the family convened in the suite, Ayana and Imani sat quietly, their usual banter muted by the weight of exposure. "I didn't think it would be this intense," Ayana murmured, scrolling past threats mixed with praise. "It's not your fault," Imani said, "but it is our responsibility." Elia sat beside them. "You don't have to carry this. Not all of it." Ayana looked at him. "You told us truth is more powerful than fear. So let's keep telling it." Celine entered, phone in hand. "We just got a message from Dr. Lina Morales, head of the MIT Center for Algorithmic Equity. She wants to meet today. Says she's been working on a federal AI ethics framework and thinks Verity could lead the rollout." "Lead it," Elijah said. "Surprised," she said. "They lit the match. Let them carry the torch." At noon, they met in a private room at O'Hare's executive terminal, Neutral Ground, for powerful discussions. Dr. Morales was in her 60s, silver curls pulled back into a braid, eyes sharp with the focus of someone who'd spent a lifetime fighting bias in systems few understood. "I watched your statement twice," she said, addressing the girls. "Then I watched it again." Imani nodded. "We meant every word." "I know," Morales replied. "That's why I'm here." She pulled a slim portfolio from her bag. "This is a draft of what we're calling the Federal Ethical Intelligence Standards Act, FESA. It's not just about screening software. It's about setting a baseline for all government-funded AI fairness audits, transparency in data inputs, and," she paused, "accountability for outcomes." "Sounds revolutionary," Elijah said. "It won't be, if it gets gutted in committee," Morales said, "which is why we need public pressure. Public faces. You." There was a long silence. Then Ayana said, "We're in." But as they left the meeting, Celine's phone buzzed with a text that made her pale. "What is it?" Elijah asked. She turned the screen. "From Legal Ops Verity Systems subject, urgent internal memo. An anonymous source has submitted a conflict of interest complaint to the SEC. Allegations include market manipulation, insider advantage, and collusion with regulatory bodies. Target Elijah Taylor. Imani gasped. They're coming after you. Elijah remained calm, though his jaw tightened. Of course they are. They can't possibly prove that, Ayanna said. They don't have to prove it, Celine said quietly. They just have to cast doubt, distract, delay, discredit. Back in the suite. Celine opened her laptop and started typing furiously. They're trying to connect the Altaver whistleblower to Verity Systems, she said, implying Miles was planted to sabotage a competitor. He wasn't, Ayanna said firmly. Celine nodded. We know. But perception is now part of the war. Later that evening, a network anchor introduced a new segment with the words Elijah Taylor, Hero of Equity. Our master manipulator Elijah muted the TV. We're going to lose control of the narrative unless we shift the ground again. Imani looked up. How by going higher? He replied. Not just airline security. All automated systems, policing, hiring, healthcare. The code is everywhere, and it's failing the same people again and again. Celine nodded. So we don't defend, we expand. Go bigger. Launch the Ethical AI Alliance now, not 6 months from now. Let the attack become the pivot. Ayanna said softly. Elijah met his daughter's gaze, something like fire flickering behind his calm exterior. Then let's do it. That night, they recorded a second video, not emotional, not reactive, but sharp, policy-driven, and resolute. Bias in AI isn't a flaw. It's a reflection of the people who build it, of the systems we protect, and of the lives we devalue. We are not asking for awareness anymore, Imani said. We are building new rules, Ayanna added. Elijah concluded. The Ethical AI Alliance begins now, led by those impacted, guided by transparency, rooted in justice. They released it at midnight by Sixa Mem. Several high-profile tech companies signed on. By 9 EUM, a congressional hearing was announced, and by 10 EU Mo. Altaver's board called an emergency press conference. The press conference was streamed live from Altaver's gleaming headquarters in Dallas. The interim CEO, Reginald Kane, stood behind the podium, flanked by corporate legal counsel and a backdrop of hollow slogans, efficiency, innovation, trust. He didn't smile. Altaver deeply regrets the incident involving the Taylor family. He began, Our systems are built on integrity and security. However, recent events have caused public concern, and we take that seriously. He paused. While we believe our processes were followed appropriately, out of respect for the current climate, we are suspending the algorithmic boarding protocol pending an internal review. Suspending, not ending. No apology, no ownership. In the Verity suite. Ayanna stared at the screen, her hands clenched around a mug gone cold. That's it. Out of respect for the current climate. Imani paced. They're trying to control the fire without admitting the house is burning. Celine muted the feed. Their legal team likely warned them, admit nothing, say nothing, hope the story moves on. They're betting on our silence, Elijah said quietly, but they've miscalculated. He stood and walked to the window, the Chicago skyline stretching toward the horizon. For the first time in days, he looked tired, not just physically, but soul deep, the weight of being right, but not yet victorious. Ayanna joined him, her voice softer now. Are you okay? Elijah hesitated. Then, without turning, said, You know, I spent most of my life trying to be the exception. The black man in the boardroom, the visionary they couldn't ignore, the one they'd listen to not because of what I am, but because of what I built. He exhaled. But it's never enough. Not really. Because the moment you challenge power, You stop being exceptional. You start being dangerous. Ayanna placed her hand on his arm. You taught us to speak up anyway. That's what scares me, he whispered, that I've handed you my war. There was a pause then, Imani's voice behind them. You didn't hand it to us. We inherited it. She stepped closer, voice trembling with conviction. You tried to build something better so we wouldn't have to fight. But we do, just like you did. And we're not afraid of that. Elijah turned slowly, eyes meeting his daughter's. You should be. I am, she said. But I'm still here. Just then, Celine's phone buzzed this time, with news that truly stopped them cold. Someone hacked Miles Carter's personnel file, she said grimly. It's everywhere. Photos, flight logs, even a fake disciplinary record. Ayanna's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God, they're trying to destroy him, Elijah muttered. Make him look like a rogue employee. Discredit his testimony. Is he okay? Imani asked. Celine tapped a few keys. His lawyer says he's going underground. Temporarily, but he's scared. For his job. For his family. Elijah sat heavily. This is the retaliation I feared. Ayanna's eyes were wide. Do we pull back? Nimi, Imani said immediately. We push forward. But Elijah's silence was telling. Celine knelt beside him. You know what they're doing. Right. They want you to doubt your impact. To isolate you. To make you question whether it's worth it. He nodded slowly. And it's working. There was a long silence. Then Ayanna whispered, Maybe this isn't just about fighting harder. What do you mean? Celine asked. It's about fighting smarter, she said. We don't need to win this through brute force. We need leverage. Celine stood. Then we find it. What don't they want the world to see? They began working through the night, reviewing Miles's full archive, digging through whistleblower files, scrubbing metadata, reconstructing timelines. And at 3:19 UM, they found it. Buried in an archive training memo from the system's initial rollout was a sentence flagged by Miles months ago. Flagging frequency among priority demographics should not exceed 15% in high-traffic zones to avoid perception concerns. Priority demographics, Imani said. Celine's voice was razor-sharp. They knew. They had quotas, not to fix the bias, but to hide it. Elijah stood, fire returning to his eyes. We just found our proof of intent. At dawn. The family gathered in the suite's living room, their faces lit by the soft blue glow of their laptop screens. Outside, Chicago's skyline blinked to life. Unaware of the storm that was about to break across the country, Elijah stood in front of a whiteboard, organizing documents, screen captures, and key quotes into a visual map. His engineer's brain was in full command mode, methodical, precise, determined. Celine placed a printout on the table. I've triple verified the source trail. That memo was issued by Altivere's Systems Integration Director, 3 weeks before deployment. They knew the algorithm was racially skewed. And instead of fixing it, Ayanna said, they wrote in quotas to make it look better. Window dressing, Imani muttered. They were gaming public perception. Elijah nodded. That's our leverage. Not just that it happened, but that they tried to bury it. He turned to his daughters. I need you both to understand, once this goes out, there's no walking it back. You'll be front and center again. But this time, the backlash could be worse. Ayanna looked at Imani, then back at her father. So be it. This isn't about us anymore, Imani added. It's about what happens to the next girl standing at a boarding gate, wondering why she's being pulled aside. Celine lifted her phone. I'll alert our media team. The statement goes live in an hour. And after that, Elijah asked, We let the truth do what the truth does, she said. At 8:02 a.m., the full report dropped. Disguised discrimination, the Altivere algorithm leak. A detailed exposé featuring internal memos, flagging metrics, and whistleblower files compiled by Verity Systems and independently verified by multiple AI ethics labs. It included side-by-side comparisons of passenger data, highlighting the disproportionate flagging rates by race and gender. One graph said it all. Black women 1 in 5 flagged. White men 1 in 83. Within 30 minutes, the story topped the front pages of the New York Times, TechCrunch, and The Guardian. By noon, the U.S. Department of Transportation announced a formal investigation into Altair Airlines, and Congress scheduled an emergency hearing on algorithmic discrimination. On social media, the momentum was unstoppable. The Taylor twins lit the fuse. Now the fire's burning through every industry that thought it was safe behind code. Code is not neutral. Algorithmic profiling isn't accidental. It's architectural. Ethics in AI. In Boston, Monica Reeve stood outside the courthouse, where she had just secured a restraining order against a group attempting to publish her daughter's private school records. She stared at the flood of headlines and let out a slow breath. "They've started a movement," she whispered. That evening, the family appeared together for their first national TV interview live, in prime time. The set was minimalist: 1 table, 3 chairs, a backdrop of gentle earth tones and soft studio lights. The anchor, Vanessa King, a veteran journalist known for her calm presence during crisis interviews, greeted them with warm eyes. "Imani, Ayanna, Elijah, thank you for being here." The girls nodded politely. Elijah offered a small smile. "Thank you for giving us space to speak." Vanessa turned to the camera. "Tonight, we're not just discussing one family's story, but the larger question it raises. What happens when the tools we use to keep us safe begin to reflect the very biases we claim to have outgrown?" She faced Ayanna. "How did it feel, in that moment, to know you were being treated differently and to know exactly why?" Ayanna inhaled deeply. "It felt scripted, like I was playing a role someone else had written for me. Suspicious black girl. It didn't matter how calmly we spoke or how well-dressed we were. We didn't belong until they found out who our father was." Vanessa nodded slowly, and when they did, Imani leaned in. Everything changed. Suddenly, we were misunderstood. But nothing about us changed, only their perception of our power. Vanessa turned to Elijah. "You've spent your life designing systems meant to protect people. What does this moment mean for you?" He was quiet for a second too long. Then, in a voice thick with restrained emotion, he said, "It means I've failed. Not because we made mistakes everyone in tech does, but because for too long, we built with the assumption that neutrality was possible. But code isn't neutral. It inherits everything we refuse to fix in ourselves." The silence that followed was heavy. Then Vanessa asked, "What would you say to the next generation of engineers? CEOs, policymakers, those who want to build better?" Imani said softly, "Start by listening to the people who've been left out," Ayanna added, "and design systems as if the people you love most will have to live with them." Vanessa closed the segment with one final question. "And what's next for the Taylor family?" Elijah looked at his daughters. Accountability, standards, change, and the Ethical AI Alliance launched tonight. He smiled, but it was a different kind of smile, one that knew how long the road still was. 3 months later, the atrium of the International Center for Ethical Technology was awash in morning light. Glass walls reached skyward. Lush indoor trees whispered above rows of chairs. And at the front of the grand hall, a simple white podium bore the newly unveiled logo of the Ethical AI Alliance. A stylized compass rose its 4 points equal, inclusive, and unshaded. Ayanna and Imani stood backstage, each in tailored suits, different styles, same quiet strength. The crowd beyond them buzzed with anticipation: researchers, students, technologists, community advocates. Not just guests, but participants in something they had helped ignite. Ayana fidgeted slightly, adjusting the sleeve of her cobalt blue blazer. Think they're expecting us to be polished? Imani smiled. I think they're expecting us to be real. Just then, Elijah stepped between them, dressed in an understated charcoal suit, tie slightly askew. You ready almost, Ayana replied. But, can I ask you something first? He nodded. Do you ever wonder if all this would have happened if we hadn't been stopped that day? Elijah's expression turned reflective. Sometimes. But change doesn't usually start with perfection. It starts with friction, Imani added. You always said pain points reveal pressure points. He gave a small laugh. Sounds like something I'd say when trying to sound wise. You were right, Ayana said. We were the pressure point. That gate was the crack. But this? She gestured out to the hall. This is the breakthrough. Elijah looked at them. Not as a CEO, not as an architect of systems, but as a father. You've both become exactly the kind of women your mother and I hoped you'd be, he said. I'm proud of your strength, but even more proud of your clarity. A stage assistant waved from the side. You're on in 2, she whispered. The room fell quiet as the lights dimmed, and a voice rang out over the speakers. Please welcome the co-founders of the Washington Taylor Fellowship for Ethical Innovation, Imani and Ayana Taylor. Applause swelled as the twins stepped onto the stage. Imani began, voice firm and composed. 3 months ago, my sister and I were pulled aside at a boarding gate. Not because we'd done anything wrong, but because a system designed to protect passengers had learned how to profile them instead. Ayana continued, her tone gentle but resonant. That day could have ended like so many others, with silence, with frustration, with pain turned inward, but it didn't, because someone chose to listen, someone chose to speak, someone chose to act. Imani nodded, and because of that, we are here launching not just a fellowship, but a framework, a living blueprint for how ethical, inclusive, and accountable technology can be built. Behind them, a screen came to life, displaying bold letters, the 4 principles of ethical AI: 1, transparency; 2, fairness; 3, accountability; 4, human-centered design. Ayana concluded, we stand here not as victims of a flawed system, but as catalysts for its transformation. And we invite you to join us, not just in building better tech, but in building a better world. The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Among them, Miles Carter, now promoted to full captain, stood with tears in his eyes, applauding the young women whose courage had helped redeem his own. Eno homos. Later that afternoon, back at the brownstone Elijah had renovated in Lincoln Park, the family gathered in the sunlit kitchen. The place smelled of cinnamon and fresh coffee. A long dining table was strewn with flowers and handwritten notes of congratulations. Monica had flown in from Boston for the event. Though the divorce had finalized weeks earlier, her presence today wasn't formal. It was familial. She poured herself a cup of coffee and glanced at her daughters, who were curled together on the couch, laughing over a ridiculous social media meme someone had tagged them in. You know, she said softly to Elijah, there were days when I thought they'd be crushed by this. He nodded. So did I. But they weren't. No. He agreed, smiling. They rose. There was a pause. Then Monica added, and so did you. Elijah turned toward her, meeting her eyes. Maybe this was the family we were meant to become, not the one we planned, but the one we chose. She nodded, blinking away emotion. It's a legacy worth sharing. That night, Ayana climbed to the rooftop alone. The city stretched below her, lit in amber and silver. Somewhere, a saxophone played softly from a distant window. She pulled out her sketchbook and began to draw not buildings, not data lines, but people, crowds, strangers linked by invisible threads. A voice behind her, midnight inspiration. She turned. Imani, holding 2 mugs of mint tea. Always, Ayana said, accepting the cup. I've been thinking about that first flight. The moment everything broke open. You regret it. She shook her head. No, but I think I understand it now. Understand what the system didn't break that day. Ayana whispered. It revealed itself. And we didn't fall apart. Imani added, we rose into our truth. They stood side by side, shoulder to shoulder, letting the quiet settle far below. The skyline shimmered, holding the reflection of a world still fractured, but full of possibility. And the sisters, born into a moment of injustice, now carried forward something far greater. Not a wound, a torch. What began as a routine flight became a moment that changed an entire industry. Imani and Ayana Taylor didn't set out to lead a movement. They only wanted to visit their father. But when the system failed them, when their skin color became a reason for suspicion, they didn't shrink back. They stood up, and with them, so did a nation's conscience. Because this story isn't just about 2 girls denied a seat. It's about every person who's ever been profiled, dismissed, or silenced by a system built without them in mind. It's about the power of standing your ground, even when your legs are shaking, about the strength of speaking up, even when the world tells you to stay quiet. And it's a reminder that the most ordinary moments, a gate, a boarding pass, a name, can become battlegrounds for justice. If this story moved you, made you think, or sparked something inside, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to our channel. We have more powerful, true inspired stories coming your way. Stories that challenge injustice, celebrate resilience, and amplify unheard voices. Until next time, stay aware, stay kind, and never underestimate your voice.